Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning and for the first time in years, you feel no self-criticism. You glance in the mirror, and instead of cataloging flaws, the tired eyes, the imperfect skin, you simply smile. You walk through the day without shame, without hesitation. Every action feels light because you're not dragging the invisible weight of judgment. Now, pause. Doesn't that sound almost impossible? Why is it easier to imagine flying than living without self-criticism? Could it be your self-hatred wasn't born within you, but planted? No infant hates themselves. No child questions if they are lovable. Yet by adulthood, worth becomes a haunting doubt. Somewhere you were taught to measure, compare, and condemn. Somewhere you were programmed to believe you are never enough. But who benefits from that belief? Why would cultures normalize shame, disguise it as humility, and sell insecurity as motivation? Why are you encouraged to keep finding fault instead of resting in your humanity? Think of how much energy is spent battling your own reflection. How many dreams delayed because you whispered, "Not ready." How many risks avoided, not because the world said no, but because you did? What if this isn't accidental? What if shame was constructed, not for your benefit, but for control? From childhood, you're fed scripts. Be quiet, be pleasing, be obedient. Stray, and you're shamed. Slowly, you learn worth is conditional, tied not to being, but to compliance. That's the beginning of the program. Schools tell you your value is in grades. Culture ties it to beauty and wealth. Religion may tie it to guilt or obedience. Media ties it to what you own. Until one day, you no longer need society to shame you. You do it yourself. Why design such a system? Because a person who doubts themselves is easy to control. Insecurity is profitable. Shame stabilizes. Self-hatred is the perfect leash. It keeps people compliant while convincing them they're free. So you grow into an adult wearing invisible chains. You punish yourself with comparison, calling it ambition. You silence your desires, calling it maturity. The system smiles. It doesn't need to cage you if you cage yourself. So let me ask, if your self-hatred was planted, what does that mean about who you really are beneath it? What would life look like without the program? This is where the tension begins. If society has programmed you to hate yourself, the question is no longer why do I feel this way, but who benefits and to what end? That is the doorway we now walk through. You were not born doubting yourself. You were born unapologetic, full of instinct and desire. The child you once were never questioned their right to exist. So what happened? The fracture begins in childhood, when your earliest encounters with authority shape identity. Every time you express too much energy or defiance, you were corrected. Don't be loud. Don't act that way. Slowly, you learned authenticity carried consequences. To stay safe, you split, exaggerating the parts that earned approval, burying the ones that didn't. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask you wear to survive. Useful, but dangerous. It convinces you the mask is you. Meanwhile, the rejected parts, anger, sensitivity, dreams, were exiled into the shadow. Here lies the first seed of self-hatred, the belief that your most authentic self is unworthy. Society reinforces the split. Schools reward compliance over creativity. Workplaces reward productivity over authenticity. Media glorifies appearance over depth. You are reminded constantly your worth is conditional. Nietzsche saw this clearly. Society tames individuals to keep them docile and predictable. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he described the last man, safe, comfortable, and empty. Self-hatred is the leash. If you doubt yourself, you spend your life chasing validation instead of questioning the system. Aldous Huxley warned of control through distraction and pleasure. What better way to keep people consuming than to convince them they are incomplete? If you believe something is missing, you'll chase it forever, even when it already lives inside you. Jean-Paul Sartre added another layer. Freedom terrifies us because it forces us to create meaning. Many accept society's definitions because they relieve that burden. But the cost is enormous. You become a character in someone else's play, rather than the author of your own. And Viktor Frankl, who found meaning even in Auschwitz, insisted purpose is what allows us to endure. Yet, meaning cannot be handed to you. It must be discovered. Self-hatred blocks that discovery. If you believe you're unworthy, you'll sabotage fulfillment because it contradicts the script you've internalized. Step back, and the pattern becomes clear. The child who once lived freely is slowly programmed by family, school, culture, religion, media, economy to believe their worth is conditional. Eventually, you internalize the lie until it feels like truth. At that point, no one needs to shame you. The system has succeeded. You will do it yourself. This is the hidden problem. The machinery of self-hatred is not random. It is systematic. It exploits your deepest needs for belonging, approval, meaning. And here's the haunting question. If this programming runs so deep, what happens to those who never question it? What becomes of a society full of individuals who all secretly hate themselves? The consequences are more devastating than most dare imagine. That is where we go next. Imagine an entire city where every person wakes up, looks in the mirror, and whispers, "I am not enough." They cover their bodies with clothes, their shame with smiles, and move through life convinced others are more deserving. At first glance, the city looks normal, busy, productive, alive. But beneath the surface, every soul is at war with itself. That city is not imaginary. It is the world we live in. The programming of self-hatred creates consequences so vast they seem invisible, like the air we breathe. Because everyone shares the same burden, no one notices how heavy it truly is. On the personal level, it breeds anxiety, depression, and addiction, whether to substances, screens, or achievements. The endless scroll through curated illusions is not entertainment. It is a ritual of self-erasure. You are trained to doubt your body, mind, and spirit until self-loathing feels normal. But the subtler effects cut deeper. Self-hatred silences your voice in meetings, in relationships, in art. You hesitate not because you lack ability, but because you fear exposure. You live smaller than you are. Cognitive psychology shows how this deepens. Once you believe you are flawed, confirmation bias ensures you see proof everywhere. Every failure, rejection, or criticism becomes evidence. Praise is dismissed, victories minimized. The brain itself becomes an accomplice. Neuroscience adds another layer. Shame is processed as a social threat, activating the amygdala as though survival itself were at stake. When society ties your worth to impossible standards, your nervous system lives in constant alarm. Self-hatred becomes not just a thought, but a state of fear. Culture exploits this. A self-loathing population is easy to manipulate. People who doubt themselves overwork for validation, overspend to buy identity, obey authority because rebellion requires confidence. Look at advertising. The message is always the same. You are incomplete, and this product will fix you. The fix never lasts, because if it did, the machine would collapse. Self-hatred fuels consumerism. Look at politics. Populations riddled with insecurity are ripe for manipulation. Confident people are hard to control. Self-loathing people crave belonging and saviors. Look at relationships. How many remain in toxic bonds simply because they believe they don't deserve better? Self-hatred lowers standards and chains people to pain. Look at creativity. How many masterpieces remain unwritten, unpainted, unsung because the artist believed their voice unworthy? Self-hatred robs not just individuals, but the entire world. The most devastating cost is existential. When you're programmed to hate yourself, you live as if you are a problem to fix, not a being to live. Life becomes an endless attempt to earn permission to exist. And no matter how much you achieve, the the permission never comes. Imagine generations inheriting this script. Parents who hate themselves pass it on unconsciously. Cultures normalize shame, making it an heirloom. Humanity evolves not toward freedom, but toward deeper chains. Pause and consider the scale. Wars, economies, religions, industries, all fueled, at least partly, by inadequacy. From beauty empires to authoritarian governments, from advertising to entertainment, every one of them feeds on the same resource: people convinced they are unworthy. The tragedy is not only systemic, it is deeply personal. The true cost is not failed dreams, but unlived lives. Not that you lacked greatness, but that you never dared. And the cruel twist? Avoidance compounds. The longer you obey the program, the more terrifying liberation becomes. Fear multiplies, excuses harden, until one day you no longer believe you fear self-hatred. You believe it is simply who you are. But that is the lie. And unless you revolt against it, that lie will write your entire life. So the urgency sharpens. How do you break free, not just from habits, but from the machinery itself? That is where we go next. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, not to criticize yourself, but to finally see the face hidden beneath years of programming. Imagine realizing the voice that has judged you all your life was never truly yours. For the first time, you ask, "What if I stopped believing it?" That question is rebellion. Rebellion against self-hatred doesn't begin with fire in the streets, but with quiet ruptures in the script. It begins when you hear the whisper, "You're not good enough," and you answer, "Says who?" It begins when you resist the urge to fix yourself and instead ask, "What if I am already whole?" Carl Jung taught that healing requires integrating the shadow, the parts of yourself you were told to exile. Rebellion means welcoming them back. The anger you buried, the dreams you dismissed, the tenderness you mocked, these are not flaws, but fragments of wholeness. Every act of self-acceptance weakens the program. Nietzsche gave another key: the courage to create your own values. Society trains you to measure yourself by wealth, beauty, productivity. Rebellion is rejecting those scales. To decide your worth lies not in appearance, but in authenticity. Not in approval, but in courage. The moment you set your own measure, the system begins to collapse. Sartre reminded us, freedom is responsibility. At first, this feels heavy. You can no longer lean on society's script, but responsibility is liberation. If you created the prison by believing lies, you can also dismantle it by writing your own truth. History shows rebellion in action. Galileo trusted his own eyes over dogma. Rosa Parks trusted her dignity over unjust law. Artists, prophets, thinkers, all risked rejection to live authentically. They were not free of fear. They moved through it. This is the counterintuitive truth. Fear is not your obstacle. It is your compass. The trembling, the racing heart, the hesitation, these are signs you stand at the threshold of growth. Rebellion is not waiting for fear to vanish. It is moving with fear beside you. Each act of defiance rewires your identity. You stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as becoming. The more you rebel, the less authority fear has. Rebellion is not a single act. It is a way of life. Each day offers a choice: compare or create, obey or question, shrink or expand. Rebellion is choosing expansion again and again. Do not wait for courage. Act and courage follows. Do not wait for clarity. Move and clarity forms. Do not wait for the right time. Make now the right time. The system does not fear your anger or protest as much as it fears your self-acceptance. A person who loves themselves cannot be manipulated by shame. They cannot be easily sold, controlled, or silenced. They no longer need endless consumption to feel whole. They no longer ask permission to exist. This is the power of rebellion. The moment you withdraw from self-hatred, the program unravels. So ask yourself, what would it look like to live without the script? To reclaim the parts you've exiled, to stop treating yourself as a problem and start living as if you were already enough. That is rebellion. Not with fists or fire, but with the radical act of reclaiming your true identity. And yet, even rebellion is not the end. There is one truth deeper still, one realization that redefines not only how you see society, but how you see yourself. That is where we go next. Imagine waking one morning and realizing the voice you've battled for years, the critic, the whisper of not enough, was never truly yours. Imagine seeing the self you thought was never broken at all, only buried. Beneath the shame and programming, something untouchable has always been waiting: your essence. The ultimate truth is this: society never programmed you to hate yourself because you were unworthy. It programmed you because you were powerful. If you were weak, no one would need to tame you. The very effort to convince you of inadequacy is proof of your potential. Only the powerful need to be convinced they are powerless. This is the paradox. Your self-hatred is evidence of your strength. The program's very existence reveals the magnitude of what you could become if you stopped believing it. Carl Jung hinted at this when he said the treasure you seek is hidden where you least want to look. The shadow, the parts you were taught to exile, are not flaws but keys. What you hate in yourself often contains your greatest gift. Your anger may be strength. Your sensitivity may be wisdom. Your wounds may hold your purpose. Nietzsche's call to become who you are was not about improvement, but unveiling. To stop living as the mask and claim the raw, unedited self beneath. To do this is to rebel not just against culture, but against history itself. Frankl taught that meaning can be found even in suffering. Here, the meaning is clear. Your struggle with self-hatred is not meaningless torment. It is the crucible of self-liberation. Each time you confront the program and refuse its voice, you forge freedom. Here is the final realization: self-hatred was never about you. It was about control. The moment you stop believing the program dies. The prison dissolves when you see the bars were imaginary. The critic evaporates when you recognize it as an echo, not your essence. And what remains when the program falls away? Something disarmingly simple. You are enough. Not because of achievement, beauty, or approval, because you exist. Sit with that. Let it echo. Because when you hold that truth, the architecture of self-hatred collapses. Advertising loses its bite, comparison loses weight, shame loses its grip. You no longer need to prove anything, to earn permission, to fix what was never broken. And when you live from this truth, life transforms. Relationships shift because you no longer accept mistreatment as normal. Work changes because you stop chasing status and start creating meaning. Creativity flows because you no longer silence your voice. Existence itself expands because you stop playing small. Most importantly, you see that loving yourself is not selfish. It is the most radical act of resistance. A society built on self-hatred cannot control people who accept themselves. Self-love makes you ungovernable by shame, untouchable by manipulation. This is the final, most powerful realization. You were never the problem. The problem was the story you were given. And once you see that, the story loses its spell. So stand at the mirror again. Look into your eyes, and instead of asking, "Am I enough?" tell yourself the truth. I always have been. The program was the lie. And perhaps then, for the first time, you will feel it. The quiet, seismic shift of freedom. The kind that cannot be sold, taken, or programmed away. The kind that was yours all along. And it will pave the way for the success. But then you'll confront the most paradoxical obstacle in your life. That is what we'll explore in the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more of such deep, thought-provoking content.